It seems Arsenal have made their decision, but all we want to know is what's the source? Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for tuning in and dropping into our live chat box or catching up if you are listening on audio platforms or on YouTube as well. Thank you so much as always for doing so. It is greatly appreciated. It's quite a big day because obviously we kind of had a breakthrough story yesterday. There is a tinge of bitterness about this for me. So the weekend, of course, I'm going away this weekend on a stag do, and I am unable to do the live show. So I pre-recorded some content for you, and I remember saying in those shows, I was like, of course, we're recording this before the weekend, so I don't really think anything major will drop, in this time. Anything can happen in the transfer window. It's just days, etc. Well, it happened. So just be aware that, of course, when those shows drop for you on Saturday and Sunday, that they were recorded before the news on Thursday evening dropped. We actually recorded one Thursday evening, literally before that news that we're going to discuss today came out. So yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. I just don't think that. I just don't think we're in a position whereby we can really complain. I'm doing shows; they're pre-recorded, they're going out. When I'm away in Canada, that's probably going to happen a fair chunk as well. I'm afraid it's just what I can do. So I apologise for that, but at least you're getting a show. Right, let's jump into the chat box. Good morning to all of you joining us. Really appreciate you being here. Di, Juns, we've got Jean, we've got me, a lot of me this morning in the chat box. Spearmint, Dave, we've got Loga. I always complain about people saying, I can't differentiate between the names because everyone's going back and forth in conversations, but it's just me that's doing that today. Spearmint, we've got Nigel, we've got Dom, we've got Dave, we've got, I've probably said Dave already, I think. We've got Fata, we've got Paul, we've got Chaz, Amber Lee. Good morning to you all. Martin, thank you everybody for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening. If you could drop a like on the video, if you could subscribe the channel. If you want to subscribe for me and let me know what the transcript is, let me know. But otherwise, just subscribe and enjoy the content that we, of course, bring you every single morning at 8 a.m. Don't worry, we're going to get to that big story, but we've got to start with some of the smaller ones before we get there. Marquinhos is set to join Cruzeiro on a permanent deal. Of course, the signing of Arsenal's that has not really worked out. Marquinhos, of course, joining the club as one of Edu Gaspar's attempts to kind of work in the Brazilian market somewhat in January of 2023. He went on loan to Norwich. He went on loan to Nantes. He's gone on loan to Fluminense, and then he went on loan to Cruzeiro. But that is now going to be turning into a permanent deal this summer. Andrea Berta now getting him off the books on a permanent basis. It just never really was going to work out. Arsenal, he never proved to be of the requisite level in England, and now Arsenal will get, we don't know in terms of a fee. There's not really been any details so far on that about Arsenal getting a fee for Marquinhos, but as soon as we know any more details financially, we'll of course bring them to you. But Marquinhos is set to join Cruzeiro now on a permanent switch this summer. The other big news of yesterday, broken by Sami Mokbel, but a story that we have discussed ourselves on the channel for quite some time. I've spoken about the confidence that Arsenal have had around a deal for Gabriel Magalhaes, and it appears that that is indeed coming to the fore because Sami Mokbel of the Mail reporting yesterday that Arsenal are close to agreeing a new contract with the Brazilian international, a player who's had interest from abroad, the likes of Saudi Arabia and so on, have been interested. But the 27-year-old centre-back is expected to remain with the club for the foreseeable future. Turns 28 in December. He's formed that exceptional partnership with Saliba. Hopefully this is something that will show Saliba indeed that work is being done to keep our best players, as well as strengthening the squad with further really strong players as well, and that they can maintain that centre-back partnership between one another. But this is obviously really solid news from an Arsenal perspective, and that Gabriel staying at the club for the foreseeable is a really positive sign as well. So, yeah, more good news in the field of Arsenal's own players. And yet again, kind of in the last 5 years, Arsenal's track record of keeping their best players, getting them to renew deals, be it Odegaard, White, Saliba, Saka, Martinelli. Previously, of course, players that Aaron Ramsdale signed new deals that we then sold on for a decent amount of money. Eddie Nketiah, of course, we signed up to a new deal and then sold for £30 million. Reece Nelson, we expect, of course, to leave this summer, and Arsenal will hope to get a fee for him after renewing his contract also. So we've been in a really strong position with these players, and we've ultimately benefited either from, selling them with the likes of Nketiah and so on, or of course, and Ramsdale too, but also in the case now of players keeping themselves at the club for the long term as well. But there was one big story that dropped yesterday, courtesy of Fabrizio Romano. Arsenal are in now concrete talks with RB Leipzig over a deal for Benjamin Sesko. Of course, I reported earlier this week that really key talks were taking place this week about how Arsenal would proceed on the striker front, and it appears that those internal discussions have led to a decision, and the player that they are moving for as a priority is not Victor Gyökeres, but it is Benjamin Sesko. Of course, we know that he's a player that Arsenal and Arteta in particular has been appreciative of for quite some time. There were links with him way back in the summer of 2024. A deal didn't happen for a variety of reasons. Of course, Sesko wanted his future to be sorted out before the European Championships. Arsenal were not in a strong position to do a deal at that point because they had yet to sell Eddie Nketiah, who didn't leave until the final day of the window. They couldn't necessarily give immediate guarantees over the game time that he wanted in what was a really important year for him, of course. And so he stayed at Leipzig for another year, where he has started pretty much every single game for Leipzig. And, of course, has been able to return a decent amount of goals. We got 13 goals and 5 assists across those Bundesliga matches for RB Leipzig, in a team who, this season have ranked rather low when it comes to creativity. It hasn't been a particularly positive campaign for Leipzig at all. But outside of that, he still managed to rack up 21 goals across all competitions with 6 assists. On top of that, some 27 goal contributions across the 45 games that he has played. So a goal contribution rate of better than 1 in 2 for a team that is not creating very much whatsoever. So this is, for me, as I've talked about with you, I've been very split on Gyökeres and Sesko, but always was leaning slightly towards Sesko and had been for quite some time. And for that reason, it's for me, this is the news I was kind of being more excited for and it more encouraged by. I just felt that the risk factor with Gyökeres was just too big. There was just a greater risk with the deal for Gyökeres. We don't know details about, of course, what type of financial element we were looking at. We know the reports from Mike McGrath in the Telegraph suggesting that it would cost Arsenal £93 million. Let's kind of wait and see to see whether or not the player does indeed cost that much. I'd be surprised. Genuinely, I would be surprised if Arsenal have to pay that amount of money to get him through the door. But I guess we'll have to wait and see what Arsenal end up paying if they can agree a deal. It's not guaranteed. It's talks. They are underway. They are concrete. They are ongoing, and it is a real chance for Andrea Berta to secure his really first major signing. Yes, the Martin Zubimendi stuff is on track as well. I know there were some reports yesterday about what the president was saying, so on and so forth. I think it's just mind games as discussions could, of course, go on financially between them. Arsenal very confident on that front with Zubimendi. And I feel like every single month we've had little reports dripping in here and there that basically have tried to undermine Arsenal's hopes of signing Zubimendi, and they've quickly gone away. I feel like this is just going to be another one of those. I think we had a super chat in there as well from Cameron, who says, are you worried about the Zubimendi deal? Have you seen what the Sociedad president has said? I think it's a financial mind game, to be honest, mate. I don't see anything more than that. But yes, Sesko appears to be the priority centre forward, and I'm kind of pleased about that. So let's wait and see what goes down between now and any point that there is a breakthrough further in talks. Right, let's go to part 2. Your questions and more right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show, of course. Looking now into the chat box and tackling some of your questions, some of your thoughts. So, if indeed you have got any that you would like to throw, now is the time. But let's keep it clean. There's some back and forth in the chat this morning. I even saw one fan saying they wanted Arsenal to lose. I mean, I say fan, they're not a fan, let's be real. But no Arsenal supporter ever wants this club to lose to better their own agendas, ever. You're effectively the equivalent of a Tottenham fan at that stage. Right, let's jump into the chat but take some of these questions, though. Daniel says, I know everyone is excited about a shiny new toy, and rightly so. But for me, the Gabriel extension is even more important, a vital player at both ends of the pitch. I think, Daniel, that's a really well-raised and written point. People take for granted contract renewals and signing of players that exist already within the group. We do take them for granted. It's easy to take them for granted because you've got them. You don't have to agree a deal with a club to sign them. You're not paying a transfer fee. You've watched them play. You get used to them. You take them for granted. And you're absolutely right. The deal for Gabriel is as good as any signing Arsenal will make this summer. The same can be said for a deal for Saka, a deal for Saliba, a deal for Martinelli, arguably as well. Less so, I think, than the other three. But it's important to think we keep players and add to them, not replace them. So certainly, I agree with you. It is definitely a very, very, very good one to do. Matt Briggs says Sesko isn't ready, in my opinion. Now, I know this is an opinion that a lot of people hold, that the player is not ready. What I would say to people around this is a number of things. All you need to have a look at is, of course, his record this season for Leipzig, which is, as mentioned before several times, and I'll keep banging this drum, a team that is not very good. It's not very good for a centre forward to play in. It's not a very good team in terms of creativity. They're ranking the bottom half of the table. In fact, I did a piece about a month ago or so, and RB Leipzig were ranking 17th, which is relegation form in terms of creativity for the centre forward. And yet, despite that, he still managed to land 21 goals and 6 assists across the campaign. This is a player, of course, that scored against really big teams, be that Bayern Munich, be that Atletico Madrid, be that Juventus. He scores in important games for Leipzig. He scored in the semi-final against Stuttgart in the German Cup. He scores in big games. And I would say that if he's not ready, he wouldn't be doing that. Just because he may not be the final article doesn't mean that he's not ready. I think that's a little bit of a binary way of looking at things. Not to mention, of course, that a lot of people are very frustrated that Arsenal didn't pull the trigger earlier with other players that have gone elsewhere and are now out of Arsenal's reach. Alexander Isak stands out as very much one of those players that was at a club like Real Sociedad, was not putting in numbers which we associate with being startlingly good or amazingly good because he was still a younger player. But immediately came to the Premier League, transitioned well because he was already playing in one of Europe's top leagues, and of course delivered as well. Another positive thing about Sesko, of course, is his availability has also been very, very good as well. Injury-wise, touch wood, we've not had to deal with too many issues whatsoever. In fact, he's never suffered an injury with RB Leipzig, and only times he ever missed games was when he was with Red Bull Salzburg. So another factor, of course, that is of a benefit, having already played in one of Europe's top leagues in the Bundesliga. So, yeah, and TJ says, how old do you have to be ready? And this is true. Like, there isn't a specific age of which you suddenly become ready. I think the evidence that we have based upon what he's done is that he is very much ready to take that next step. He may not be the finished article, but the article that we already have right now is showing some really positive things. I think that people are falling into a little bit of a trap of, yes, I know some people wanted Gyökeres a lot more, but because they wanted somebody that isn't Sesko, immediately that is affecting the way that they assess, analyze, talk about, appreciate, consider the alternative option. It's easy. We're human. We do it. I get it. But you need to have an open mind. And saying things like he's not ready is obviously patently just not true. So let's wait and see what happens. It's not a done deal, far from it. And lots of things need to happen before this deal even happens. But it's mad to me how some people are reacting to this potential news, especially because Arsenal are moving early. How often have we wanted Arsenal to move early in a window for their regardless of who their targets are, whether we agree with them or not? Zubimendi looks like it's going to be a done deal very soon. Sesko, talks underway to land our priority target in May, before the window is even open. How long have we been asking, calling, begging, praying for Arsenal to do their business early? How many times have I seen people in the comment section say, look at Liverpool, already in talks for Wirtz, already in talks for Frimpong, already in talks for Kirke as well. Arsenal are doing their bit as well, already having pretty much wrapped up the Zubimendi deal, pretty much have sorted that. And now, of course, are moving ahead with talks as well for their key centre-forward target. There's also suggestions, of course, as well, that other elements as well, in terms of the wide player, a defender, a backup keeper, Andrea Berta and the broader recruitment team are on it as well. So, let's chill out. Clive says, we chose Jesus over Isak at that time. That felt like the right decision. Obviously, it's turned out through a number of reasons, without, out of Arsenal's control, 2 serious knee injuries certainly affecting that. But we chose, in the end, the wrong player. We chose the more experienced player. We chose the player with Premier League experience. We chose the player who's won Premier League titles. And despite them looking rather good, Jesus, at the beginning of his time at Arsenal, in the end, it proved to be the wrong choice. So are people still that headstrong that, of course, they're not willing to consider that this might be this time the right thing to do? Snipescope says, Tom, does Arteta have time? No, he has to win a major trophy, so getting a project in Sesko is bad, and also allowing Gyökeres. Is Gyökeres not a project either? Why is Gyökeres not a project? He's coming to a league he's never played in. Yes, he played in the Championship, still a very, very different league, and only put in numbers similar. I mean, Adam Armstrong, Southampton centre-forward, scored 1 less goal for Southampton in the Championship as Gyökeres scored 22. Adam Armstrong scored 21. So let's not act and pretend like the Championship goal record is something that suddenly indicates that he is ready or can play at that top level and deliver that many goals in the Premier League. It's not. It's a good sign, but it's not a guarantee. Gyökeres in himself would still be a project if he was to come to Arsenal. And the number of goals that he scored for the most dominant club in Portugal is certainly something that is worth thinking about. It's always worth thinking about that. You have to apply the context. But people look, I think, at just the number of goals for a team that doesn't play the same way as Arsenal, for a team that is dominant in their league against far worse defenders and players that the Bundesliga holds, and suddenly assumes that that's just going to immediately translate when there are no examples, 0, of any other player doing it. 0 examples of any other player being able to achieve it. If you go down the list of Portuguese centre forwards of top scorers in their respective seasons, be that Jackson Martinez or Jonas or Carlos Vinicius, when they make that switch, Bas Dost, when they either make that switch or when they arrive back in Portugal, having played in a top 5 league, their numbers either drop, or if they're moving back to Portugal, their numbers go up. That's the trend. That's the evidence that we have to go on right now. So when people say that Sesko is a project, but Gyökeres isn't, that can't be true, because we know that either one of them have an element of development, an element of transition, an element of development to go through themselves when making that switch. So don't fall into the trap. Don't be naive. And just because maybe you wanted one over the other doesn't mean you have to slam and wrongfully assess one over the other. I've said this and I maintain this. I think Sesko is the smarter signing. I think it's the better investment of the two. I think it's the less risky investment of the two. That's where I sit. Clive says, Tom, mate, no centre forward would make people happy. Isak, price, injuries, Sesko, project, risk, Gyökeres, poor league and wages. I say risk it with the younger man. I agree with Clive. All of them have drawbacks. As I've said before, I don't think either of Sesko or Gyökeres is a considerable upgrade on Havertz. I don't think either of them are a considerable upgrade at all. The only player I saw as a significant improvement on the centre forward that we already have was Isak, who is not gettable. I don't see any other player as a considerable upgrade on him. And people slam Havertz all the time, get such a bad rap, always. Player that was on track for a 20-goal season this year, a player who played the majority of games in 23-24 as our centre forward or in an attacking midfield role, and ended up being a part of a team that scored more goals than the Invincibles in a record-breaking season for the number of wins we got in the Premier League as well, and fell just 2 points short of a title. That was it. So I don't get why they get slammed as much as they do, but they do. Alvarez, sadly, isn't realistic. I think they were just kind of reports out from Spain, a little bit speculative. I mean, Simeone's been pining for Alvarez for years. The fact he would let him go after one season never made any sense whatsoever. Tayo says, the positive is that Sesko seems to be Arteta's choice. Is this a vote of confidence in Arteta? Ultimately, he should be happy with a new striker because the onus is, of course, on him. Baron says, Tom, the meltdown last night from major Arsenal content creators with the Sesko news was embarrassing. The club knows more than us. I trust Arteta and was always Sesko for me. Jerome says, Tom, your storytelling and radio voice has improved. Have you taken classes? No, I haven't. It's just trial and error, mate. It just is what it is. I've been on. Is going on radio count? I guess that gives you just kind of like a run. So yeah. But no, I've not taken any classes. And it says the difference between Isak and Sesko is Isak was a special talent, and he's proven it now. Sesko shows glimpse of that talent. So let's see. There isn't any difference, Anthony. What's the difference between Isak when he left Real Sociedad and Sesko when he's leaving RB Leipzig? What's the difference between the two? You said he's a special talent, but why isn't Sesko? What's the difference? I'd love for you to tell me what the difference is at the point that Isak left Sociedad and Sesko potentially leaving Leipzig now. I'd love to know the difference, the key difference that separates them so greatly. Gunnar says, congratulations, Liverpool, for a back-to-back title. Sesko is not even the best Germany striker, Ekitika. Who's Ekitika? Anyone? Is way better, but I guess he remains Arteta. I guess he remains Arteta of Aubameyang. Arteta is not ruthless enough to back Al. Whatever that means. Jack says, Tom, can you actually bring up Isak's stats for Sociedad before joining Newcastle compared to Sesko's for Leipzig, and we can see the difference? It's not a bad shout. FBref Isak. 2020 last season for Real Sociedad. 21-22. So in his last season for Real Sociedad, Isak scored 6 goals and got 2 assists in 32 La Liga games. The season before was his best season. He had 17 goals and 2 assists in 34 games. And the season before that, he scored 9 goals in 37 games. So in just doing some quick maths there, in 103 games in La Liga across 3 seasons, he scored 32 goals. Actually, he played 2 extra games and scored 1 goal in the last season before he made the switch. So 105 games, 30, 26, 32, 33 goals. So 105 games, probably make a note of that. 105 games in La Liga, 33 goals. Sesko for Leipzig across just domestic leagues in the Bundesliga. There's a lot of similarities between Leipzig and Sociedad, so it's quite a good comparison. In 3 and 31, 64 games. So 64 games in the Bundesliga. He has scored 27 goals. To be fair, I don't know how many of those were penalties for Isak. It was in those seasons he scored 2 penalties, so you can take 2 goals off if you like for Sesko, if you want to, if you're that way inclined. I know Gyökeres fans aren't. And the same for Sesko. He scored 2 penalties of his goals. So let's say 27. So 27 goals in 64 games. So shall we do the stats of what that means per game? So what is it? 33 divided by 105. So Sesko is scoring at a rate of Isak is scoring at a rate of 0.314 per 90 across his La Liga games, and Sesko is scoring at a rate of 422 per 90. So this is why I asked Anthony the question. If Isak is a special talent and Sesko isn't, why is Sesko scoring at a faster rate at the same age as Isak was when he was at Sociedad? Would be my question. Why is he scoring at a faster rate? It's worth pointing out that Isak in those 3 seasons got 5 assists, and in the 2 seasons that Sesko's been at, he's had 7. So in one less season, he has 2 more assists as well than Isak does. So that's my question, I guess. Why is Isak considered a special talent despite scoring at a less frequent rate, despite creating at a less frequent rate? And Sesko, I don't know. Handort says, stop comparing Sesko to Isak. There's nothing that guarantees that he will turn out like Isak. We never learn. Is it stop comparing them because it doesn't agree with what you think? June says, how clinical? Fair question. Shall we have a look at clinical nature? So Isak in that season, get my tab up again. So Isak scored non-penalty goals for this. 9-17-4. What would we say that was? 33. So 33 non-penalty goals. And he did that with a non-penalty XG. I'm going to have to get my calculator out now. Non-penalty XG of 7.3, add 16, add 8.2. 31.5. So Isak outperformed his XG by non-penalty XG by 1.5. Okay. So Sesko, let's go to his numbers for those seasons. Non-penalty goals, 25 non-penalty goals across those 2 seasons. 25 MPG. And he did that with a non-penalty XG of 7.7, add 8.4, 16.1. 16.1 non-penalty XG. So he outperformed his non-penalty XG by, if I can use this calculator properly, 16.1, 8.9. Do you want any more? Do you want any more? So Isak's outperformed his non-penalty XG by 1.5 in his 3 seasons at Sociedad. In 2 seasons at Leipzig, Sesko has outperformed his non-penalty XG by 8.9. Do you want more? Sesko's finishing is a lot better than Isak's was at Sociedad. So there you go. And it says, Tom, Isak's ability to outpace defenders, dribble effectively, and adapt to different roles makes him a valuable asset. I don't know these numbers. I'm doing them on the fly. Shall we do take on success? Take on success rate. Sesko. And I'd be surprised if Sesko wins this, but we'll have a look. So take on success, his ability to beat players in 105 games. Sorry, let's do Isak first. Take on success rate across his 3 seasons at Sociedad was 56.7% in his first season, 56.7%. In his next season, it was, is it the same again? 56.7%, 56.7%. In the next season. And in the 3rd season, it was 50% in the 3rd season, which makes sense. I mean, players are getting more kind of familiar with him, I guess. So that's Sesko's take on success rate across those 3 seasons. Let's do sorry, that's Isak's. Sesko was 48.6% in last, not the season just gone. And then this season it went up to 52%. 52%. So on average, if we do an average of all those, so we get a better idea, 56.7, add 56.7, add 50 divided by 3 equals 54.4% success rate in terms of take-ons. And Sesko was 48.6, add 52 divided by 2, 50.3. So 3.1% better. So Isak is 3.1% better. So if we're talking about his ability to outpace, dribble effectively, I mean, that's the gap is 3.1%, Anthony. Are we saying 3.1% difference means one can do it and another can't? Is that it? But when I look at a gap like 8 point, what did we say it was? A gap like 7.4 when it comes to XG, or when it comes to 0.15 when it comes to 1-1, sorry, when it comes to goal scoring. I'm sorry, but the numbers aren't backing up these points that are being made against Sesko right now. So, you know. Barbosa says, this is not rocket science. You go for the guy that has more goals and costs what? It is kind of more rocket. It's more complicated than that, isn't it? It is more complicated. We've talked about the Jonathan Soriano example as just kind of an example. And if we're talking about the guy that scored more goals, well, if you wanted Isak when we left Real Sociedad and was looking at a guy who's scoring at a faster rate, I don't really know what to tell you. I'm struggling a little bit there. I'd be curious what Gyökeres's non-penalty XG was, how much he's outperformed his non-penalty XG. This season, 21.4 non-penalty XG, 27 non-penalty goals. So he's outperformed that by 5.6, I think. So 5.6 this season. Sesko's outperformed his by 8.9. So of the goals that he was expected to score, Sesko has scored 8.9 better than his XG. Gyökeres, for example, who gets more chances, more shots, more opportunities to score, was outperforming his non-penalty XG by 5.6. And it says, Tom, also, Isak is an exceptional talent, is rooted in his blend of physical attributes, technical skill, and mental composure. He's a true modern striker, but hey, I'm just a fan like all of us. But are you saying, therefore, Sesko doesn't have that? Because as we've just discussed, technical ability-wise, he's got that. Because the difference between him and Isak is 3%, right, in that season that he left Sociedad. Physical attributes, Sesko's 6'5". He's quick. He beats players. I'm struggling here, Anthony, and I feel like you're stretching a bit. With respect, I just feel like you're being bombarded with a lot of numbers that are disproving a lot of the arguments. And I know it's annoying, but I'm not doing these with knowledge of the numbers. I'm doing these live. You know, it's easy for me to embarrass myself by doing it live. That's why I do them live, so it's more genuine. But I'm sorry, man. These numbers aren't. Wobo Jog says, no, Tom, please stop. You have to let the agendas agenda and the narratives narrative. I love that. Let the agendas agenda and the narratives narrative. Dave says, price is my issue. That I don't have a qualm with. You know, £93 million, if that's what he costs. Woof. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I don't feel particularly comfortable paying £93 million if that's what he costs. Like, I'll be very clear with you. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I or the T says, what strikers have come from the Bundesliga and performed in the Premier League, and how many strikers have left the Bundesliga and done well elsewhere? Shall we have a look at the list of Bundesliga top scorers? Of course, we know that Erling Haaland has translated his numbers from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. Heung-min Son is another one. Aubameyang, of course, is another one. Just off the top of my head, I'm trying to get a list of top goal scorers here. So in 22-23, Harry Kane is the top scorer for the last 2 seasons. Nicholas Füllkrug in 22-23, of course, made the switch to West Ham. You would argue that's not gone well. West Ham are terrible, and he is 32. Is one. Christopher Nkunku was the one from the season before. Certainly, Nkunku's not exactly a great example of having translated those numbers. I mean, he's got 14 goals this season, which is more than I thought he had. But he's not been... He obviously came in, got injured straight away. So I imagine that's probably played a part. Robert Lewandowski, of course, dominated the years before that. Aubameyang got it and did quite well. Other than that, Edin Dzeko for Wolfsburg moved to Man City, did very well with Manchester City. Beyond that, we're not looking at players that made a move to the Premier League. But yeah, I think, you look at the players that have made those switches, Aubameyang, Haaland, Heung-min Son, they've done very, very well. But there are examples of ones that haven't worked out, like Nkunku, like Timo Werner, Füllkrug more recently. So I think when it comes to the Bundesliga, we've got a list of hits, we've got a list of misses. When it comes to the Portuguese league, we've got a list of misses and we've got a list of nothing. But it's I always do lean on that kind of league context last, preferring to look at the players more individually, and even then Sesko's kind of very impressive for his age bracket as well to be outperforming those. Ricky says 90 million is a nonsense. It won't be near that at all. Let's wait and see, I guess. G Nonimus says Sesko can get a pass and turn and shoot with power and watch his highlights, and that's what we need. Nazim says this guy's never cooked a ball in his life compared to Sesko and Isak.
Come on, Tomo.
Who'd have thought the Gooner took me at the Emirates had a penalty with the chance to embarrass Charlie's earlier effort? Let's have a look.
Ooh.
Never kicked a ball in his life. Never kicked a ball in his life. Oh, I've got a microphone. Where's the microphone gone? It's here. Never kicked a ball in his life, they say. Never kicked a ball in his life. How did I pull that up so quick? There's a list of all the videos we've got, and I haven't deleted it. It's just still there. There's quite a few, actually. A lot of interviews with players still here sitting around. We're ready, mate. We're ready for these people. We're ready for these people. Right, you're right. Open. Did you not see the keeper? He dived to his left. Did you not see it? Did you not see that? No? You can check out our crossbar challenge video as well if you like, where someone might hit the crossbar. D123 says, Tom, if we do sign Sesko, who do you think out of Williams and Rodrigo will be a better left winger for him? It's a good question. It's a really good question. I think both have their merits. I'm really intrigued to see what Rodrigo would do on the left for Arsenal. I fear that it's not necessarily a realistic. It's not a realistic option, I don't think, from the sounds of things. Nico Williams, very creative. So there you go. Steve says, Tom, show your five-a-side goal. I wish I had that on like a hotkey, because again, I'd love to show that video. But can we find that video? Shall we try and find that video? I can definitely share it. The Arsenal way, five-a-side. Can we find the goal? I mean, it was a great goal. Pep would be proud of this. Is that the one? I don't know if it was that video. I don't know if it's this one or not. This is just an ego trip for me now. I'm not even very good at football. There's just so many clips of me now playing. No, it's not this one. I'm not going to be able to find it in quick time. Maybe it's this one. It might be this one, but I don't think it is. I'll know if it's me because I'm wearing trackies. No, I'm wearing shorts in that one as well. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to find it off the top of my head or the top of this search. So you're going to have to find it yourself. But maybe I'll find it for when I get back from Bristol this weekend. B says, I think that if people want to make a case for Gyökeres that they should use his Champions League and intentional stats because his Portuguese stats mean nothing. Ask Darwin. They don't mean nothing. I mean, being that prolific doesn't mean nothing at all. but I just think it needs to be taken in context and talked about in context. Amira says fans need that when a player moves, they're probably going to play with better players. If Isak moved to Arsenal, respectfully, he'll be playing with better players, same as Sesko, same as Gyökeres as well. But I think the Gyökeres thing evens out because he's already playing for the best team in his league that dominate it every single season for the last however many seasons. Pelzer says getting him in earlier could be huge for us, to be honest, meaning he'll be able to start earlier also, get used to the system and get used to the way of playing. Barron says, to be fair, we did so much work on Sesko. The percentage of signing him was always going to be higher than Gyökeres. Jack says Sesko is the best option for our system. 6'5", powerful in the air, great hold-up player, both-footed with an eye for goal, fast with quick feet. People who don't want Sesko didn't want Isak. Jerome says, do you expect Kai to start and Sesko to be bedded in slow? I'd imagine that's probably what we would see, unless Sesko, and it's still an if, it's not done, if he was to come in, it would still require that transition. And that's the benefit of having a centre forward of Havertz's level already at the club, that you've got two options that can both play. Sal says, can you name 5 players from the Premier League worth signing? Unfortunately, the ones I'm going to name are probably going to end up going elsewhere. But I do like Milos Kerkez. He probably is going to end up at Liverpool. In terms of forward players, Brian Mbeumo, I think would have been a really good number 2 to Saka, but I don't think was ever realistic in terms of giving him enough minutes while you've got Saka at the club. I've always liked him. I'm very appreciative. From my time of covering the whole Tony to Arsenal stuff, I was always very much on the Brian Mbeumo hype before Tony left. Ebere Eze, of course, is a player I'd love to see Arsenal move for. I just think he could cover off a number of positions. Arsenal do have an interest. We know this, but whether or not it's going to happen, I don't know. 2 more. Isak, obviously, but I don't think we can count him. It's just not it's not really fair to say Isak is it. It doesn't really count. Elsewhere, Carlos Baleba. I have a lot of time for Carlos Baleba. I think he's a really, really talented midfielder. And certainly if there's a Mendy deal wasn't happening, I would really like to see somebody like him potentially join the club as well. And then I have a lot of time for Justin Kluivert these days. Morgan Rogers is another good shout in the chat box, yeah. But Justin Kluivert as well. I don't think he'd leave Bournemouth. I think he's pretty much locked in there. But Justin Kluivert has had a fantastic season for Bournemouth. So do like him quite a lot. Salahuddin says, is Watkins possible if an attacker is leaving Arsenal? Don't think so. Ezra says, Tom is just an Arteta fanboy and agrees with everything he says. Oh, Ezra. Feel free to come on and tell me if you like, but I think you will. Philly says, we need someone here and now, not a project player. Gyökeres is that guy, even if it's in a lesser league. His goal output is outrageous. Also, Sesko hasn't even been able to be scoring more than 15 goals in the Bundesliga, which, again, when you look at the creativity numbers of Leipzig, is not really a surprise. As we've talked about, his non-penalty XG this season was 8.9. Sorry, he's across all competitions was 16.1, and he scored 25 non-penalty goals. So he only managed to get enough chances given to him for a 16.1 non-penalty XG, and with that, he's across the last 2 seasons, he's got 16.1 non-penalty XG. I don't really know Philly where that stands. Lonesome Gunner says, why are we so obsessed with who's fit in the system that haven't yielded a trophy? We need to be the best in the position, because I guess the system that we've got has put us into a position of potentially lifting those trophies better than we have ever had a chance of winning them since the last title we won in 2004. So I guess that's probably the reason why, because the system that we have is what's taken us back to title relevancy, taken us to Champions League semi-finals. That's why it's important that the player that we have fits as seamlessly as possible into what we're trying to do, because what we've been trying to do has been putting us back into there. And that's the problem, again, with kind of the view of football in a binary way of trophy success, no trophy failure. Because if you say that the system that we've used hasn't won Arsenal a trophy, but if you discuss it in the context of has the system that we've got taken us closer to a Champions League title or closer to a Premier League title than Arsenal have managed in the last nearly 20 years, the argument, or 18 years, 17 years in regards to the Champions League final 2006, the answer is obviously yes. So that's why. That's why you shouldn't look at football in such a binary way. B says, not asking what you want, but if you had to predict who we will sign by the end of the window, like if you had to bet your savings on it, who would you predict? There's a lot of unknowns. So I should preface this answer by saying there are a lot of unknowns. The backup keeper, the defender that I am aware that Arsenal are wanting, there isn't really much information there at all. So it's very hard to say names for those two positions. I can give you kind of a rough. I think Arsenal might go for like an older keeper and then have Carl Hein. Just feel that they might end up saving some money there unless a really good option comes out of nowhere. But that's just a suspicion. Defender-wise, I think they'll go for somebody who's like Tomiyasu, like a versatile kind of option that can play across multiple positions. I think that's what Arteta would like because we have already a lot of really good specialists, but can also play in other roles. Midfielder, obviously, Zubimendi. Forward, I think it's fair to point towards Sesko. Wide player, I'm going to hang my hat on Nico Williams at the moment. That's where I'm going to hang my hat right now on Nico Williams in terms of a wide player. Attacking midfielder, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So yeah, Red Luddite says, "Oh, come on, the Spanish league is a higher standard than the Bundesliga." By what metric? Out of interest, because yes, Atletico Madrid, yes, Real Madrid, yes, Barcelona, and we look at those three teams who dominate that dominate La Liga, yes, but Sesko for RB Leipzig, Isak for Sociedad. So what are we measuring it by? So they have three more competitive teams. Bundesliga, you got Bayern Munich, you got Bayer Leverkusen, you got Borussia Dortmund, on top of some other very decent sides as well. So I am La Liga's biggest fan. It's the league I covered before I got into, specializing in Arsenal. It's a league I have fought and in the past have debated about previously being better than the Premier League. It's not anymore. But I'd argue that the Bundesliga has been very, very competitive. Very, very competitive across multiple competitions. So I think they're pretty close. I think the Bundesliga competitively is pretty close with La Liga. So I just think it's closer than you think. Yes, you think Real, Atleti, and Barca, but the league as a whole, I think they're very close. I mean, Stuttgart, who finished in 9th place, won the DFB Pokal, won the German Cup this season over all of the other teams in that competition. RB Leipzig, who finished 7th, they beat Stuttgart, beat them in the semi-final. So, I think to say La Liga is miles better. The top teams in that division, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Atletico Madrid, certainly the top title-chasing teams you could have a solid argument about, but I don't think it's as big of a gap as what people think. Rohan says Sevilla and Valencia have big histories. They do, but I mean, they're not particularly great right now. Sevilla and Valencia have been in turmoil for quite a while. Valencia are 12th. Sevilla finished 1 point above the relegation places. So that's how good Sevilla are right now. The teams that finished above Sevilla this season, Girona, Alvarez, Espanyol, Getafe, Sociedad, Mallorca, Osasuna, Rayo Vallecano, Celta Vigo, Betis, all finished above Sevilla this season. So wasn't the best example. Probably not. Anyway, right, I've got to wrap things up because we've got to move. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate you listening, and certainly will be tuning in with you over the weekend. There'll be a show for you tomorrow. There'll be a show for you on Sunday with special guests. Be aware, of course, that those shows were recorded before this news about Sesko did break. So just be aware of that. But there's a lot of broader conversations about things. And we do discuss Sesko and Gyökeres as well. So it's still all relevant and certainly worth your listenership. So there will be a show for you in the next 2 days at 8 a.m. I'll be back with you for a live show on Monday, hopefully having survived the weekend. Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.